What if I told you that there's a drivetrain out there with more range than SRAM Eagle's 520%, more range than Rohloff's 526%, and even more range than Pinion's 636%. Also, it doesn't have 14 speeds, it's not electronic, there's no need to use goat links or friction shifting hacks or anything like that, and it's also made by a reputable brand that you know. You'd probably say, Russ, what are you smoking? If someone actually did this, they'd be telling everybody. It'd be in press releases. They tout it as one of their key features, putting it in their top of the line drivetrain and probably charging a lot of money. You'd think that, but in this case, no. In my previous rant video, I personally like to think of them more as video essays now. I lamented the ever addition of gears with no increase in range. It's like being sold the same size pizza for more money, and all they're doing is just cutting the slices smaller. In this video, we're gonna talk about the opposite. We're gonna talk about a drivetrain that has more range and costs less. To carry the pizza analogy forward, it's like getting a larger size pizza. The only catch is that it has fewer slices. What is this GOAT, this unicorn mythical drivetrain? Well, it's been behind us all along. It's our good old friend Q's. The funny thing is this drivetrain is so low key. I've had it on this bike in the house for the last couple of weeks, and I didn't realize how awesome it was until just like recently. I'm testing out the Panorama Cycles Boreal, and they offer it in a 2x-Q's build, which is super interesting. So what's unique about this build is that it combines a Q's 2x, in my case a 4026. In their stock offerings, it's a 3622, I believe. And they pair that with a massive 11-45 in the rear, and it all shifts. I had to check the build sheet a couple times to make sure that was going on, because this seems like amazing, and no one's really talked about the potential of a 2x-Q's drivetrain. Everyone thinks of Q's only as a 1x drivetrain, so this combo is pretty much flown under everybody's radar. But when you do the math, it's quite literally the widest range, index, modern drivetrain that you can buy readily available today. So the first thing I thought is like, why is Shimano not, making this more of a thing? It actually seems like they do more interesting things on their lower spec components, and a lot of mainstream sites just overlook this. Okay, enough faffing about. Let's look into numbers and why I think this is pretty unique. So first off is the crankset. It's a 2x version. You can get them in various flavors. The one I have is a 4026, and that yields a gear range of 105 on the high end to 16.4 on the low end. The one that's listed on the Panorama website for their builds uses the 3622, and that yields you a 94.7 high gear and a absurdly low 13.8 low gear. This is gear inches, by the way, not meters development. I don't like ratios. So those cranksets, I priced them out. You can get for about 28 euro, which is pretty dang good. In terms of the rear derailleur, you want to get the 11 speed. I believe the model number is a 8020. It has longer cage when compared to the 6000 series. That'll set you back about 75 euro, probably the most expensive thing in this drivetrain. You can get a pair of shifters for about 48 euro. That's front and rear if you're not getting the total baller ones. The cassette is an 11-45 Link-Allied. I saw those online for about 48 euro. And of course, you'll need a chain. Shimano recommend an 11-speed chain. That's about 15 euro, depending on where or what you buy. All in, you're looking at a whopping 198 euro for the widest range indexing modern drivetrain on the market. That's pretty dang impressive. So to put this a little bit more in perspective, that drivetrain costs less than one GRX Di2 rear derailleur. For the cost of the top-of-the-line SRAM Eagle T transmission rear derailleur, you could get 3 of these. For the cost of the roll-off hub, not including the shifter and all the other bits, you could get 5 of these drivetrains. And for the cost of the top-of-the-line Pinion, which probably comes closest in terms of gear range, you'd have to buy 10 of these. And that's just for the gearbox, doesn't count the shifter and all those other things. So if this isn't the best deal for a true like adventure bike packing low gear range drivetrain, then I don't know what is. So how does it perform? I took it on the mini tour this past weekend and it performed great. I'm not going to do a full review on it here. I'm going to include those thoughts when I actually review the bike. But generally speaking, no complaints. I think I did the entire trip without ever leaving the big ring as it were. Shifting into the easier gears is fast and snappy. Going into the harder gears, depending on where you are in the rear cassette, it can be a little bit slow when you're on the big cogs on the rear cassette, but as you go to the smaller cogs, the shifting into a harder gear gets a lot snappier. I think the shifting performance is perfectly acceptable for anyone that isn't a snob or needs to attack someone on a ride. In addition to the Q's 2x, SRAM also released the ESSA rear derailleur, which is another kind of low-key cool, no one's talking about rear derailleur. Except for the folks at Rivendell Bikes, full credit, they're the ones that pointed this out. What's unique about the ESSA is that it's a wide range, 1x. Stated capacity is 45 teeth, so that means you can probably push it to 46 to 48, maybe 50. That might be stretching it a bit much, but it uses the older cable pull of 8 and 9 speed. So that, practically speaking, that means you could run a wide range 1x using old 9-speed compatible friction shifters, or if you want to get really spicy, you could combine it with older 8 and 9-speed drifters. That would be pretty interesting. Pretty cool, but again, barely a peep from Shimano or other bike media. Where does that leave us? We've got an amazing wide range drivetrain for Shimano in the form of Q's 2x. Quite literally, probably the widest range modern drivetrain out there on the market today. All it's missing are some road shifters. I did some early experimentation with Q's and microshift, and it's pretty close. I think I can make it happen. It worked really well on the stand, but was a little bit laggy on the road under certain circumstances. But I feel like there's a couple things I could tweak, and it just might work. Seeing how massive a range we can get with a 2x Q's, I'm a little bit more motivated in trying to figure out how to make it work. There are a few things I could do to improve the shift quality, experimenting with different chains, different cassettes, but honestly, this is where I need your help. I love doing these hack videos. I feel like they're fun and informative and give real value where, other sites aren't looking. But the truth is, buying parts for these hack videos is really expensive, especially relative to the income that AdSense generates. So for example, I'd probably have to spend about 300 euros worth of components. And if the video does about average, I'd make $100 back. So you can see it's not financially viable, and probably why a lot of people don't make those kinds of videos. So here's the pitch. If you want to see more experimentation on drop bar Q's and other wide range index, all mechanical drivetrains, I want to start a new series called Peak Mechanical, where we'll try different combinations and say for sure whether they work or not. But it's going to take your support. So please join us on Patreon. That's the best way to do it. Pick up some merch, or you can do a super chat, Venmo, PayPal, whatever. Put a note that you want it to go towards Peak Mechanical, and I'll earmark that for this project. Videos like this, there's no way Shimano is going to approve of it or fund it. So we've got to do it by ourselves, and it costs money, guys. So you know what to do. As always, keep the supple side down.